I rise to speak on behalf of the Green Party in support of the Ngati Tuwharetoa, Raukawa and Te Arawa River Iwi Waikato River Bill. This is a very important bill, not only for the protection of the river but also for restoring the mana of the Waikato River Iwi, and the Green Party is very pleased to be standing tonight to support this bill. I think it is a remarkable fact about the Waikato River that there is 14 metres of visibility at the lake Taupo. You can see through the water about 14 metres. But by the time we get to the mouth of the river, the visibility is reduced to less than 1 metre. And the reason for that is that the Waikato River is tremendously polluted. And any steps that can be taken to clean up the river and make any difference to cleaning up the river are tremendously important. It's not only important for the mana of the Waikato River iwi, it is also tremendously important for the health of the river itself. Mr. Speaker, you can't save a river unless you start with where a river starts. And where a river starts is in the catchment. It's in the soils, it's in the land, it's in the treatment of that land. The vast majority of contaminants in the river do not originate from point sources. It's not the sewage systems that contribute the nitrogen and the phosphorus to the river, it is the farmland. It is a simple fact that more than 75% of all the nitrogen in the Waikato River comes from non-point source pollution. It does not come from point source pollution. So if you want to control the pollution in the river, you have to have control over the activities in the catchment that are adding the pollution to the river. And overwhelmingly, the pollution in the river is coming from farming and agricultural intensification and activities. That is a simple scientific fact. So while it is tremendously important that this bill gives the River Iwi the right to have someone on the consent hearings, the simple fact is that the vast majority of the pollution that enters the river never goes anywhere near a consent hearing because it is a permitted activity. Until we are willing to regulate intensified farming activities and make them a consentable activity rather than a permitted activity, neither the public of New Zealand more generally nor the River Iwi will have a say over the vast majority of pollution that currently enters the river system, because the vast majority of nitrogen, phosphorus and sediment entering the river system enter because of permitted activities, not activities that require a resource consent. It is a problem that is reflected from the top of the country to the bottom, that the overwhelming majority, more than 3/4 of the contaminants in our river systems come from non-consented activities, that is, permitted activities. And so if we are to address the real causes of pollution in the Waikato River, if we are to address and give the power to the River Iwi so that they can actually take control of all the pollution and contaminants entering the river system, we absolutely have to make intensified agricultural activities a consentable activity. And until we do that, while it is fantastic that we are passing these bills that give co-governance and co-management arrangements, there is a sleight of hand in this bill, and the sleight of hand is that we are not giving full control over the catchment and the activities in the catchment that actually contribute the vast majority of contaminants into the river system. So I would say if this Parliament is really serious about giving the River Iwi full control to actually clean up the Waikato River, something that the Green Party fully endorses, we would go further than simply this bill. We would go further by ensuring that the activities that are actually putting the pollution into the river system, the Waikato River, the Waipawa River, not only the other river systems in the Waikato like the Piako and the Waiho, all of those river systems that are terribly polluted right now from activities that are not consented. They are permitted activities under the RMA. There is no reason to get a resource consent to pollute the Waikato River. You are allowed to do it under law because it is a permitted activity. Until we get our heads around the fact that the vast majority of pollution entering this system is actually from permitted farming activities, not from consentable activities such as a sewage discharge or a dairy shed discharge, we will not address the pollution in the system. And so I would say to Ngati, Tuwharetoa, Raukawa and Te Arawa iwi, River iwi, this is just the first step. I fully understand the depth of your feeling about cleaning up your awa and your river system. And goodness knows, we know that the existing structures to manage our river systems have profoundly failed to clean up this river system. And all strength to your arm in getting hold and getting some control over the real sources of pollution in your awa. Because it is only if those who love this river system and those who really care about this river system are able to get their hands not only on the resource consents around sewage, but on all the activities that are causing the vast majority of pollution in the river system, all the permitted activities in the catchment. It is only by getting control over those activities that those who love this river, those for whom this river is part of their identity, they will be able to clean up this river system. So while this is a tremendously important bill, the next step is actually much harder. And it's going to require more than a small amount of money every year in terms of a clean-up fund. It's actually going to require control and regulation of farming, intensive agricultural activities in the catchment to clean up this precious river. And that is the real challenge that faces us tonight. So yes, let us vote for this bill. Yes, let us acknowledge the river iwi and their contribution. But let us be under no illusions in this House that by passing this bill, somehow it will be cleaned up. In fact, we are passing a tremendous responsibility onto the river iwi and those involved in the co-governance. The question is, are we giving them sufficient powers to achieve what they really wish to achieve and that the Green Party really wishes to achieve, which is to clean up the river system, and that can only be done by getting our hands on the more than 3/4 of pollution that comes from currently permitted activities that require no resource consent whatsoever, the permitted activities that add the nitrogen, the phosphorus and the sediment into this river system that are destroying the life in this river system, and that can only be done if we also give the power to the river iwi and the co-governors of this river system the power to have say over intensive agricultural activities in this catchment. And that is the next challenge. So I welcome this bill and I congratulate the government and Labor and National who have been involved in this, as well as particularly the iwi, but the challenge to clean up the river system is still great, and that is the next step. Tanaka, Mr. Speaker.